Welcome to another day exploring China's unknown regions. Today I'm on a road in Qinghai province. Today we'll visit the country's largest lake and several interesting places our guide has planned. But I wanted to start the day here to show you how diverse the scenery can be on these roads, because here's the toll booth and over there is the gas station. And in front there are some flag pyramids known as Tibetan Longtan, which can be found all along the road. I wanted to show them to you, but let's go now because I'm freezing. It's so cold and the lake is already completely frozen. Our next stop is the Fortress of the Eight Corners, which is a military base that was discovered very close to the temple we visited yesterday. But the important thing is that it's called the Fortress of the Eight Corners because of its peculiar shape, which you can see from above. But reaching here wasn't easy since we're already about 3,000 meters above sea level. Here oxygen becomes scarce, the sun burns more, and fatigue becomes a major factor. I can't speak, I'm running out of breath, and we still have a long way to go. I'm telling you, we're already running out of air, but we're going to climb the hill, because from there you get a spectacular view of the city below. So, let me get there, catch my breath, and I'll tell you more. I had to stay at the top for about 20 minutes catching my breath because I have to admit I'm out of shape. In the last few months I've had to deal with an injury. It hasn't allowed me to stay in shape, but we made it crawling and whatever it took. We finally made it to the top of this hill, and only now am I realizing that the city was behind me the whole time. I thought we were going to climb the hill and see the city from the backside, but it turned out to be the opposite. The city is actually over there. And yes, in fact, you can clearly see the eight corners of the wall. And originally I thought we were going to find the remains of a lost civilization, but that's not the case. People still live there. They told us that there are more than 300 inhabitants who work in livestock and agriculture, and that their crops are just outside the city. Those are all the ones you see around there. And of course nowadays they also work in tourism, since with these wonderful views, thousands of people decide to come. In the summer, when the weather is warmer and the pastures are green, just imagine this whole area painted green or even covered in snow. It must be very beautiful. But going back to the shape of the fortress, if you notice, it's not square like most walled cities usually are, but instead it has a cross shape. That's why it has 8 corners, from which it was easier to watch over the city in all directions. You may also notice there's little building material here, since this area isn't wooded and has almost no trees. That's why the locals used compacted earth to build their wall and reinforced it with sticks and wooden branches that go inside the structure. Curiously, they also decorated their wall with ceramic jars. So it not only served as protection, but in a way it was also a form of art, and this technique in general is known as masonry. Honestly, in moments like these, the word indescribable makes sense because there's no way to express what it feels like. To be here, getting to know the lifestyle of people we probably never would have imagined existed. And the thing is, even though we've all heard about Tibetan culture, how many times do we really ask ourselves, where do they live? How do they live? What do they do for a living? Because right now we're not even in Tibet. Keep in mind that we're in Gansu province, which is still quite far from Tibet. But there are a large number of Tibetan people who are spread throughout the province. And just look at how vast this place is. Just think that hundreds of years ago, when there was no technology, when there were no roads and no cars to get around, they had to do it on foot and had to live around here, where the conditions can be quite extreme. It's incredible, and just look behind us at the beautiful mountains of the Tibetan Plateau in front of the farmlands of the people who live in the Fortress of the Eight Corners, which is just behind this hill. Being here, you might think there's little to show beyond the landscapes. But behind me is a mound of stones that is very important to Tibetans, since this mound of stones is known as in Mandarin Chinese. And it's a mound of sacred stones that Tibetans use as a spiritual marker, and this is very common on the Tibetan Plateau. And it turns out that Tibetans use it as a way of praying to ask for spiritual protection during the journey. Remember that Tibetan people used to be nomads. On the other hand, they could also be used to mark important points, or to ask for good luck, or even to give thanks for a safe journey. Tradition says every traveler who completes a safe journey should add a stone, with the full intention of wishing a good journey to the next people who come this way. So let's do our part and add to this pile of stones. This stone is for you. Let's put it in a safe place. When you visit here, this will be the most typical view. Roads with spectacular scenery but very lonely except for the cattle that are always crossing the roads.
They come here to feed because they live here.
But I stopped here because in the background we have a Tibetan Mastiff, which is a majestic and very beautiful animal typical of the area. And interestingly, at some point it went viral since Tibetan Mastiffs became the pet of the rich. Actually, not just the rich, but the millionaires. They ended up costing millions of yuan, but here they are, the ideal shepherd dog. And if you're wondering, this is how the locals live. They used to be nomads, but nowadays they've started to settle down and have places they return to year after year. But that doesn't mean they live here most of the time, especially during the winter when they return to their villages. Now we're entering Qinghai province and the road is indescribable. It's beautiful because the scenery keeps changing. Suddenly you're on the Tibetan Plateau watching the herds and there's snow everywhere, and out of nowhere we're in the middle of a reddish canyon. Impressive, but what's even more remarkable is that the bullet train passes through here. All of this here is the structure for the bullet train that's going to pass above, surrounded by breathtaking views. And by itself, driving here is already an incredible adventure, but just imagine going through this at 300 kilometers per hour. That's going to be magical. Now we are in the city of Tongren in Qinghai province, which is located within the Huangnan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. This place is at an altitude of about 2,500 to 3,000 meters, so we're still struggling. And according to the latest census, it has around 100,000 inhabitants, most of whom belong to the Tibetan ethnic group. However, now we're going to visit a fortress called Gomeri, which belongs to the Tu ethnic group. And this fortress has 600 years of history and is one of the oldest in the whole country. But the most interesting thing is that people still live inside here, and now we're going to see how they do it. These are the corridors of the fortress, and as I mentioned before, these fortresses were built in a way quite similar to how they were built in Mexican towns. In fact, in my little town of Metepec, this type of construction was quite common until recently, but in this case it's compacted earth with straw and local sticks. We've now been invited into a local's house to see how people lived in ancient times. The decoration is really interesting because you would never imagine that this is yak dung, just like you heard. All of this is poop, which is used as fuel in Tibetan culture. They put it in stoves since it's very flammable, because if you notice, it has a lot of straw. So instead of using gasoline or coal, Tibetans use dung, and now we're going to see how. And here in front of us is the family's house. Tan Bubu, who are local heroes since they were a family that defended the weak. That's why they became one of the most respected figures in the village. And as I understand it, 4 generations lived here, the first of whom was the leader of the village, which at that time was like the ruler or the most respected figure in the community. Interestingly, the second generation was very poor because they worked in agriculture, but their hard work benefited the third generation. One of them went out to study Tibetan medicine and worked for 12 years as a doctor in Sichuan. And although he didn't become rich, he did quite well. But as they say, there's no place like home. And that's why the 4th generation decided to return to their hometown, and today he is our host in this beautiful home. So let me give you a tour. Welcome to an authentic local house where we can see how the family has lived since the 1st generation. Over here we have the most important part of the house, which at the same time serves as a kitchen and as a heater for the bed. And that's because Tibetans use the bed as a living room, a sitting area, and a dining room. But to get through the cold nights in the area, Tibetans had their kitchen right in front of the bed. And here they would put yak dung, light it on fire to heat their food. And at the same time, this kitchen had some tunnels through which the heat could enter, so at night they didn't get so cold. It's really interesting that right in front of them they had the stables where they kept their cows, or potentially their yaks, their sheep, or their goats. And from here they would get the fuel they needed. And now we're going to enter what seems to be like their wardrobe, because here they have on display the clothes they used back then. It's similar to what I've seen people wear on the street. This one is made of yak skin, and here's their typical Tibetan hat. And here we can see the different kinds of clothes they used, and they just told us that these are clothes that were actually used by the family, coming from the family trunk. But now let's go see the terrace. I want to see the view. And now we're on the second floor, and the owner is telling me that in the past, young people used to live on the second floor because they were in charge of sounding the alarms in case of an attack. And the older people lived on the ground floor since it was safer. On the other hand, an interesting fact is that the houses were usually connected to the houses of your neighbors so that in case of emergency you could move from one roof to another. If you notice, here we could jump to the neighbor's house without any problem, and the same would happen with the house next door if there was one. That way, the fortress allowed you to run around in case of an attack and defend yourself without any problem. And here we have the altar. This is a typical Tibetan altar. Here we can see the offering they placed, and in front there are fabrics with very beautiful drawings. Hello, what's your name?
My name is Lada Dawa.
My name is Max. How old are you?
I'm 10 years old.
We're heading to the highest part of the house. Even now it feels a bit scary. This is the fortress. Now we're on the roof of the house, which is where they could keep watch or counter any attack. From here, they had bows and arrows and the ability to jump from roof to roof across their neighbors' houses to find a better attack point, or rather a better point of defense. And it does make me a bit uneasy to stand here because look at the roof. It's also made of compacted earth. Actually, it sounds hollow. Imagine this view from your rooftop. Every summer I'd be here having a barbecue or something like that, although the only problem is that from here you can see all your neighbors. This city is like a maze. No matter where you walk, you kind of get lost.
Where are you from?
From Mexico, and you?
From Qinghai.
You're local. Are you Hans?
I'm from the two ethnic group.
And do you speak the local language? In their local dialect, Yankachi means, "What are you doing?" Probably several people live here. This is a room. Over there we have a museum, and all the decorations have a meaning. For example, this is the Buddha of longevity, which is represented by the peach fruit, and the Buddha of longevity operates both in China for regular Buddhists and for Tibetan Buddhists, so everyone pays respect to him. And we will find him in many parts of China. His name in Chinese is Changsho Fo, which means Buddha, and Changsho, which means a long life. There are probably many other decorations with symbolic meanings that are hard to understand. Chinese culture is vast, and I always tell you that it would take a whole lifetime to understand it. This is very interesting because we entered a kind of garden that in Mexico we could compare to the old tenements we used to have in Mexico City. Because in this type of garden, several family members live together, the uncles, the grandparents, the cousins. But something really interesting is that from here you can hear the Tibetan prayers that the family is performing, and inside you can hear the bells. Obviously we can't go in so we don't disturb them, but we're very grateful that they allowed us to come in. To this day, it's still their home since each one is like a small apartment. Over here we can see that they were preparing food. They have garlic, tomatoes, and the food they're going to eat. I'm not being disrespectful. I spoke to the family and they let me record. See, the grandmothers are there. Interestingly, at the back of the neighborhood was the temple. The upper floor remains a temple while the lower floor has become an exhibition hall. So people interested in life here can learn about it easily. May I come in? This is the family room? Is this your house? How many people live here? Mom, dad, grandma, and your siblings too? What's your name? I'm glad to meet you. My name is Maximiliano Javier Carrera Camacho. He is Toei Yashi, who invited us in to see his house. He saw us looking around and said, "Come on in." This is the living room where they hold their meetings and receive visitors. And I said to him, "Hey, this is a huge living room. How many members are in your family?" He said, "There are 7 of us, grandparents, parents, and 3 children." The problem with coming on a tour is that they usually take you from one place to another, stopping at tourist spots. And there's rarely time to go out and explore the city. So today I left my tour a little earlier so I could really walk through the streets of this city, and you could say that what we saw now was an old area. But now we're going to walk where most people live, where the hospitals, schools, and gas stations are. And if I left my tour, it's because they're going to eat now, and honestly, I want to go out while there's still daylight because that way we can see well. Hello, hello. And I love that the locals wear their cowboy-like hats, which are the classic Tibetan hats. Because as I mentioned before, the sun here is strong and it hits hard. That's why people have darker skin and sometimes wear face masks, but oddly they don't use sunscreen. And I've been trying to find it for 3 days and it's nowhere to be found. Their skin has already adapted, but mine burns every night. These over here are the apartment buildings where a lot of people live, but they're really nice because they're very different from the apartment buildings in other parts of the country. These ones actually have a local touch, you could say. And look, he's wearing his little bear hat. We're heading to the center now, where supposedly every night the elders come out to dance. But I don't know if they do it in this part of China too. In most cities that's how it is, but we'll see here. Hello, to the center please.
Which center?
To the Grand Plaza that's up ahead. Do you speak English?
No, where are you visiting us from?
I'm a foreigner, I'm from Mexico.
Is that in Russia?
No, it's not Russia, it's Mexico. I speak Spanish. Oh, are you joking around with your friend? Hey, what's up? Where are you guys?
We're nearby.
Ah, very good, very good. I got in the taxi and I'm on a video call with your friends since the three of them stayed here from this one. Where did he come from? I said I want to go downtown and he asked which one? I told him, well, I don't know which is the downtown of the city. He says, no idea. And I say, well, just take me somewhere kind of entertaining. And he said, okay.
Should I drop you off here?
I'm not sure. Is the vibe here good?
Yeah, this is the plaza.
Okay, I'll get out here. What do I owe you? Thank you, goodbye. Well, that's it. Who knows where we ended up? It's like the city center. Hello, 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 guys, huh? Do you speak English? I need your suggestion. I'm unsure where to go. Where can I go to have fun?
To the plaza.
Which plaza?
Over there are dances at night.
At night? But there aren't any now, right? Where should I go? I'm a tourist and not familiar with the area. Now, because I'm going to travel, but I don't know at what time, from 8 o'clock? Okay, good, so I'll arrive at 8 at night.
Not much is here, but the plaza is nice at night.
At what time?
At 8 o'clock.
Okay, then I'll come back around 9. Thank you, goodbye. Now, we're definitely in a city that's very different from what we're used to. If you notice, people here also look different since 70% of the population belongs to the Tibetan ethnic minority. Apparently, this is a health clinic or, well, maybe what would be considered a small hospital, but it says it's for Tibetan medicine. Look, this character is Tsang from Shi Tsang, so here it says Tsang and Wai Tru, meaning Tibetan treatments, and here it's written in the Tibetan language. I'm also going to see if I can record the entrance, just so you can see that the clinic is also decorated with a Buddha rug. I love these cities because you see monks walking everywhere. But it's very hard to talk to them because either they don't understand me or I don't understand them, or they just see me as a weirdo. This is like the local convenience store. They also sell large bread loaves and Jack's milk, which is supposed to be good. I haven't tried it yet, but let's check out what the store offers. Oreo cookies, water jugs, socks. I find it curious that I see some people staring at me, and when I turn to try to talk to them, they literally run away, like actually running. Let's see if there's any local beer. Is this local?
No, it's from Lhasa.
It's from Lhasa. I want to buy a local drink. Local drinks or snacks, anything is fine. Is that good?
Yes.
I'll give it a try. I need to sample the local products. What is it? Apple juice? Qinghai specialty. Let's try this one made from yellow fruit. I don't know what guango is, but the girl recommended it. This looks like the local school or high school, I'm not sure. What I do know is that the locals here speak a completely different language, and when they speak Mandarin, you can hear a pretty strong accent. So maybe we sound the same? Is this a middle or elementary school?
High school.
This is the middle school. The students just told me that this is the local middle school. The students are just getting out of class at 6 in the evening, so they're leaving late. What time do they get out of school?
We live at the school.
At the high school?
We are from high school.
Ah, high school. So you're about 16 years old.
16 or 17 years old.
So you never leave school? Do you study all the time?
Yes.
And do you learn English?
Yes.
Ah, you should have said so earlier. What's your name?
My name is Don Song, and yours?
My name is Max.
Nice to meet you.
Why is everyone here?
We came to drop off our phones
Where do they leave it?
in this little shop.
Can't they take phones to school?
Exactly.
Don't they watch TikTok at night?
We can't. We can only read.
You always have to study.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yes, we work hard.
What time do you start class?
After 6 a.m.
6 in the morning? That's so early. Impressive. Do you pay someone to watch your phones?
Yes.
How much?
7 yuan if you leave it charging, otherwise just 3. We charge them at home on weekends.
So they go back home on weekends?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. I saw all the students standing in line and asked, hey, what time do you get out of class? It's already 6 o'clock. And they told me, no, we don't get out of class. And I said, what do you mean you don't get out of class? And they said, well, classes do end, but we live inside the school. But the most impressive thing is that they're not allowed to bring cell phones in, so they have to leave them at the store. At the small store, they charge 10 yuan to hold phones and 10 yuan to recharge credit. So every night they have to come and leave their phone and then come back to pick it up. Let's try sneaking into the local high school. The students are all 17. I'll turn the camera so you can see the school and the soccer field. What's your name?
Yang Jianzhong.
And yours?
Yang Jianzhong.
What? Do they have the same name?
Yes.
Nah,
It's true.
you're kidding.
I'm serious.
You want to trick me.
We really have the same name.
Is it a common name?
Yes.
It's 6 p.m. Why are you going to school? Because today is Sunday, I'm going to school on the student's recommendation. I'm heading to the market, unsure if it's a mall or open-air market. But the idea is to buy a Tibetan hat for the sun because since I don't have sunscreen, I need something to protect myself from the sun. I think this is like the old street of the city. And I imagine this is where the night market is set up because I see they're setting up the stalls, but it looks like we came too early. And what's the star product? Of course, insoles for the cold because I'm telling you, it gets really intense. It feels very different from other places we've been. What's the largest size you have?
This one.
I'm 1.9 meters tall. How much is it?
30 yuan.
30 yuan? Okay, I'll buy it. Don't you have warming insoles for shoes?
I have these.
I already have those. I want the heated ones. Do you have them?
Not those.
Hi, how are you?
How can I help you?
Is this halal meat?
Of course.
Thanks, but I'm Mexican and not from here.
Mexico?
I'm sightseeing and didn't know they sold halal meat.
Oh, of course we have it.
Great. Do you speak Arabic?
Yes, we do.
Wow, that's interesting. It's a Muslim butcher shop. There's a lot of halal meat around here. Because even though 70% of the people who live here are Tibetan, there are still quite a few Hui people who are Chinese Muslims, and that's why they have these kinds of butcher shops. I finally found what I wanted. This is the Tibetan clothing store. Here's a classic Tibetan hat. Some cost 380 or 320. They're not cheap, so I bet they're well cared for. And they're literally cowboy hats. They even have a picture of a cowboy here, and here is the traditional Tibetan clothing. It's very well lined. I imagine these must be luxury suits. I don't think they're for everyday wear. Look how beautiful they are. And you can tell he's a tailor because there was a sign there saying that he makes custom suits for you and you can also buy your boots. These are all typical Tibetan boots, and this appears to be the fabric used for men. And all the ones up there are women's dresses, which are more colorful. These are probably for summer. Look how interesting. Tibetan bread is eaten like a king cake. It looks like a bread roll but in the shape of a ring or a cake, and I see that it's very popular. People are walking by with their bags of bread and they buy a lot. Hello teacher, what is this bread called?
Momo.
Momo, it's the local bread. In our country we also have similar ones, but they're long, not round. Is it baked?
Yes.
But anyway, see you tomorrow as we'll continue our adventure through this province. Welcome to a new day discovering unexplored China. Today begins at a very specific Tibetan art school because here they only focus on creating paintings known as tanka, which is the Tibetan word for a scroll. And throughout our tour we will enter the classrooms, we will talk with some of the students, and we will see some of their masterpieces. To make it more interactive, I would like you to try to guess the average price of one of these works of art in the comments, and at the end of the tour I will give you the answer. This is the facade of the school, which is very beautiful, and this person is one of the main teachers at the school. If you notice, it has all the Tibetan details, from the wind horses with the typical colors of Tibetan Buddhism to the decoration. And by the way, they welcomed us with something known as hakan. In Tibet, they gave them to us in white, but here they are yellow. It's usually paired with the phrase tashi delek. There are different colors called hara, and this time we received the yellow one. This means that you're going to become rich, especially if you come to receive it here. And there are other colors like red, which means power, there's blue, which is peace, and on the other hand there's white. I can't remember what it means right now, but I'll put it on the screen for you. This is the main lobby of the school, where they have on display some of the artworks created by both students and teachers. And they're very beautiful. Each of the elements in these paintings is related to Tibetan Buddhism, and everything has a meaning that would be impossible to understand for someone who does not practice the Tibetan Buddhist religion. And all of these are display pieces, so right now start estimating how much you think a piece like this might cost. We're discussing an average. This is the canvas for creating the artwork where they make the initial sketch. It's all for practice. In this part of the exhibition hall we can see the work halfway done, and it's very interesting because here you can still see a painting. On the other hand, the finished versions seem as if they were made of fabric, but not everything starts with a painting like this one, which in this case is of Buddha. You might be wondering where they get the colors for the paintings from. Well, they make them from this type of minerals, which they then have to put in these mortars, let's call them that, to grind them and obtain the pigment. So you put your stone there. It's hard work because you have to crush it, and once you've crushed it, you have to turn this. You have to roll it completely to make the grinding process easier, since it helps you turn it, and if you turn it, it makes the process simpler. And that's how we get the pigment. Let's see how the students use it. Now we're in a classroom, we have to keep quiet because they're busy and it requires concentration. Greetings, brother. How many hours do you paint a day?
Usually 5 hours in the morning.
What time do you start?
At 8 a.m.
What time do you finish?
Around 2 p.m.
Why did you choose to start studying?
I like to paint.
How long have you been studying?
11 years.
11 years? So how old are you?
27 years old.
So you began at about 16.
Yes.
Oh, incredible. And are you a teacher now, or are you still studying?
I'm an apprentice.
How long does it take to become a teacher?
It varies. Some become teachers after 8 to 10 years.
Okay, thank you, brother. It's a pleasure to meet you.
The pleasure is mine.
He has studied Tanka art for 11 years and works 9 hours daily. But it's enjoyable. As for them, it's also a form of meditation. Remember that this is a religious practice and that it's not just art. How long have you been learning?
5 years.
How much do you have left to finish this masterpiece?
3 or 4 months.
Have you been doing it all by yourself?
Yes.
Wow.
With the teacher's help.
He made this one and it still needs about 3 or 4 more months of work.
How many hours a day do you paint?
10 hours.
Working 10 hours a day, he still needs about 3 or 4 months to finish this masterpiece. How long have you been learning this?
About 4 years.
4 years? And how did you get into this art?
On the internet.
Did you find it on TikTok?
Yeah, something like that.
Do you live here? I assume they provide you with everything?
Yes.
Wow, cool. How much do you have left to finish this painting?
Just a little bit. About 2 months.
Is 2 months fast?
Yes, haha.
By the way, how old are you?
18 years old.
18, so you started at 15.
Yes.
Wow, I admire you. Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you. Another interesting thing about tanka painting is the thousands of ways clients can customize their painting. For example, in this case, they requested it with pearls, and all of these are pearls that the artists had to place by hand one by one, until the painting was finished, which in total required 2 master artisans and 8 months to complete. But apparently there are also other types of paintings. For example, for the child's room, someone ordered a character from a very famous animated movie known as Neya. Here we have another painting that is quite representative of what China is today. We have the flag, the national symbols, but at the same time faces of different ethnic minorities such as the Muslim minority, the Mongols, the Hui people who are Chinese Muslims, the Tibetans and many others. Remember, there are 56 ethnic minorities, but not all can fit. Now it's time to reveal the average price of a painting like these. It turns out that each of these can cost around $50,000, which is about 1 million Mexican pesos, but that's just a starting price. There are some that are worth much more, and right now you might be wondering why anyone would be willing to pay so much money for a painting like these. Well, keep in mind that this goes far beyond art because it's deeply connected to religion. And therefore, wealthy believers don't just see it as buying art, but as making a donation. And in the same way, this can mean that they're cleansing their karma. Hopefully one day we can join such a large donation, but this money also helps keep art alive, since the students who come to this art school don't have to pay anything at all to come and learn. Being here covers housing, food and all necessities, allowing them to fully focus on learning to create such an expensive painting. But they do have to commit at least for 10 years, which is how long it takes to become a master. Outside the classroom, I found a very interesting sign that says, "On the path out of poverty, not a single person or a single ethnicity can be left behind." When the Chinese people speak, when the Communist Party speaks, and when the leaders of the Communist Party of China speak, their words matter. That means it takes all the people, that is, the 56 ethnic minorities that make up this country, to keep making progress, to keep moving forward. They placed it here because many people in this area are part of the Tibetan minority. But anyway, that being said, let's continue with our journey through this beautiful province. Our next stop is even more spectacular. Now we are in the village of Deji, within Qinghai province, which is a fairly new town. In fact, it only has 9 years of history. And what do I mean by saying it's a new town? Well, all these families previously lived in much poorer places where there wasn't much industry, and as a result, many of them didn't have jobs. However, in 2016, the government created a resettlement project through which they moved more than 900 people to the banks of the Yellow River, where people could benefit from the tourism industry, which required an investment of approximately 67.3 million yuan, since they not only had to bring the families but also had to provide them with support to create the necessary infrastructure so they could live and carry out their new businesses. And thanks to the relocation and the development of the tourism industry, today, the average person is already starting to have an income of up to 17,600 yuan per person, according to the latest census in 2024. And this represents 3 times what they were earning before, all thanks to this wonderful place. And honestly, who wouldn't want to spend a day at the beach along the banks of the Yellow River, one of the world's most important rivers, with these spectacular views of the mountains that are characteristic of the area? And well, you might be wondering, why doesn't the Yellow River look yellow in this section? Well, that's because at this stage the river hasn't yet passed through the section where it fills with the sediments that give it its characteristic color. That's why it's so clean and clear here. You can swim with no issues. If you notice, the sand is golden, it's quite fine, and the contrast with the color of the water and the mountains in the background makes it a spectacular landscape. Here in China, they've nicknamed it the Maldives of China. I've never been to the Maldives or know what it looks like, but it sounds luxurious. DIG means happiness in Tibetan and is the name of the new community founded just 9 years ago. Let's see if we get the chance to take a walk over there, because I'd like to talk to the new villagers, so to speak. And this isn't a project that's only being carried out in this part of China. The government is actually creating new villages everywhere and promoting them through tourism, but always starting with investment from the locals so that they can truly benefit from the economic boost that tourism brings. Behind me is the museum, where they tell the story of the hundreds of people who decided to leave their homes at more than 3,000 meters above sea level to come to this place. But it's very interesting because they just explained to us that the government not only covered all the moving expenses but also gave them a fully equipped house with solar panels. Not only do they produce enough energy for the family's personal use, but at the same time they also generate a surplus that provides monthly income to everyone living in this community. According to what they told us, that amount can be between 3,000 and 3,500 yuan per month. And combined with the income they get from tourism, an average family has an annual income of between 20 and 30,000 yuan per year, which is quite good for the area, especially considering that people here don't have mortgages and the cost of living is quite low. Honestly, hearing these stories amazes me, and it's a real inspiration that makes you realize that it's actually possible to live in a country where there are opportunities for everyone, no matter where you are. They are the new villagers, they are the people who moved here 9 years ago. This is the house the government gave them where they started their food business, and now they live here in a beautiful place with a wonderful view. What more could they want? Welcome to the largest lake in China and the one with the biggest size. I mean, it measures around 4,300 square kilometers, which makes it even bigger than Mexico City. Therefore, it's not surprising that the locals call it the Blue Sea. In fact, for a long time, the locals believed this was the ocean, because it's not only an extremely large lake, but it's also a saltwater lake. On the other hand, this lake has multiple sacred islands. Like Bird Island, which is very famous for the large number of birds that migrate to this area of the country every year, it's nearly impossible to stay here because it's so cold and the wind is too strong to hold the camera. And I need something known as heat pads or nuan bao bao in Chinese to keep myself warm. But being here, I couldn't miss the opportunity to show you this wonderful place that will soon be completely frozen, and you can already see it happening now. This is the lake shore already starting to freeze, and soon the ice will cover the entire lake. But besides this lake, this province has another one known as Chakahu, which in Tibetan means salt lake. It's very shallow and therefore reflects the sky. Before that, I wanted to show you this wonderful place where last year Noelia and I began what we called our 88-day trip around China. And thanks to that project, today we have a wonderful community of people who are interested in China and who share that passion for the Asian giant. To honor that wonderful trip, I came here to remember it, this time without Noelia, and I have to admit I really miss her. Traveling is great, but it's even better with someone you love. And well, at this beautiful lake, our journey through Qinghai province comes to an end, but our series Discovering Unexplored China is only halfway through. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more. Sending you lots of love from Qinghai Lake, and see you next time.